Let's go back in time and think for a moment about the first time you looked face to face with the big, scary, terrifying monster called personal finance. I want you to close your eyes and think, how old were you? What were you thinking? Going out on a limb here, you're probably somewhere in your 20s, pulling your hair out in stress, pen or a pencil in hand, because for the first time in your adult life, you were tasked with mapping out how much it was going to cost for gas, groceries, rent, and more. You probably asked yourself some really daunting questions, like how will I get by? How much should I have in savings if I should be saving at all? But the worst of them all, am I falling behind? These are questions I get from clients all the time. Hi everyone, I'm Jonathan Maynard, and I'm currently a senior at Bentley University. Upon graduation, I'll be a financial advisor, where it will become my #1 mission to help clients with their money. But my goal here today is to not only inspire, but instead spark a nationwide push to mandate financial literacy programs in our public school system. But before I jump in, I'm sure you've all seen the headlines. Unfortunately, it spells a very bleak outlook for personal finance in America today. Collectively, Americans now owe $1.13 trillion on their credit cards alone. This brings the average balance to over $6,000 per account. Pair this with double-digit interest rates, and the problem becomes even scarier. What's equally as scary is student loan debt in this country has topped $1.75 trillion. And yeah, that's trillion dollars with a T. But the worst part of it all is more Americans than ever are living paycheck to paycheck. To be exact, 60% of all US households live paycheck to paycheck, with 50% of households making over 6 figures doing the same exact thing. It goes to show all of us that this is an issue that is not just isolated to those in lower socioeconomic groups, but instead it applies to everyone. It's grim, to say the least. But what if we could do something today, right here, right now, maybe next week, that could buck this trend? What if I told you it just might be possible? Now, this does not mean that there's an overnight solution, because if there was, I would snap my fingers, that'd be it, and we wouldn't be here. But I think we could all agree that the answer lies somewhere in financial literacy education. But what does that even mean, the buzzword financial literacy? Well, according to the National Financial Educators Council, financial literacy is simply the understanding of the topic of money. But that's not all that helpful, is it? You see, and you've probably experienced this firsthand, there's so many things that go into money. There's a lot of different complexities, nuances, and factors that factor into your overall plan and your future that it becomes overwhelming and you start to give up. For example, you might know what a 401k is, but do you understand the complexities of your matching program, maybe your vesting schedule, or perhaps there might be early withdrawal penalties? You might understand that you should be saving money, but do you understand how much you should be saving or the way you should save that money? You might want to pay less in taxes because, well, who doesn't? But would you know how? You might budget, but do you follow it? All of these things are just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to financial literacy. And the fact that we as a society don't know them is really, really scary. According to the Global Financial Literacy Excellence Center, who issues a financial literacy report annually, only 35% of US respondents can correctly pass the functional knowledge test. The functional knowledge test is the baseline test for examining your financial literacy understanding. It's interesting because this correlates almost perfectly with the paycheck to paycheck statistics that I mentioned earlier. But it's not a coincidence. So now that we know a little bit more about just how bad the issue is, I ask again, what is the long-term solution? How can we buck the trend? The answer is remarkably simple. Make financial literacy curriculums a standard, permanent, mandatory practice in our nation's high schools, and yes, even our middle schools. Think back to your years in school. We were taught very important subjects such as English, math, science, and history. They were foundational courses that shaped our youth. But love or hate them, They were all a necessary part of our education to prepare us for the real world. But in our effort to prepare our youth to become productive young adults, the one thing that is missing universally across the board is financial literacy education. Thankfully, due to our education system, almost the entire country is literate, meaning we can read, write, speak. Most of us can perform basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But once again, we have failed to teach our youth one of the most foundational real-world skills that is personal finance. The answer has been clear as day to this glaringly obvious solution. The writing's been on the wall for decades, and the people know it too. According to the National Endowment for Financial Education, 88% of people wish that at least one semester of personal finance education was required throughout their time in high school. 80% of the same poll respondents said that they wished it was mandatory for all 4 years. This is why we need to mandate the financial literacy programs. Everybody knows the solution, but nobody wants to talk about it. When we're young, we have a tendency to discredit the value of education, especially with this topic, because it's really easy to kick the can down the road. So the option that schools are adopting across the nation to make it optional is not the way forward. It has to be mandatory. So let's pair this with another interesting statistic. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, 38% of all high school students graduate directly into the workforce. Now, this is only expected to rise as the cost of college tuition balloons to record highs. This means that more than 1/3 and growing will need these skills immediately upon graduation, but I would argue they're going to need them throughout their college careers as well, especially when it comes to taking out student loans. According to Fortune magazine, 43% of full-time enrolled students will hold at least one job throughout their studies, with 81% doing the same thing when they are in school part-time. So now that we know a little bit more about how bad the issue is, but also what the value of teaching financial literacy at a middle school and a high school level is, I ask once more, what can we do today? How can we change how personal finance is taught in our school system? Well, I'll open with a joke. I'm a big music guy, so as the Doobie Brothers famously said, we're taking it to the streets. Now, I'm not a singer. Believe me, you do not want to hear me sing at all. But all jokes aside, that means that it starts at a local level, a level where one voice, one concern, and yes, one thought carries the most weight. We need to be talking about this at school board meetings with our curriculum designers. We need to be talking about it with our children, our nieces, our nephews, and yeah, your coworkers. We need to bring this taboo subject of money out of the darkness for the benefit of all people, not just the benefit of the wealthy. There needs to be a persistent voice in our local municipalities to push for financial education. We need to write to our state and federal representatives to solidify that financial literacy education comes on the scene, but stays on the scene. We need to make sure it is being taught to our youth, because ultimately, they'll be the ones taking care of us. We need to be vocal. We need to be loud, and oh yeah, we're going to be heard, because future generations are at stake. So from dollars and cents to just a little bit of common sense. Let's make an investment in our youth that will change the course of our economy, but most importantly, change the course of our history. Thank you.